In January 1982, a 29-year-old American man named Stephen Callahan was doing something he loved, not metaphorically, literally. He was sailing alone across the Atlantic Ocean, in a boat he had built himself, not bought, not borrowed, not inherited from someone with better judgment, built with his own hands over several years from scratch. He had designed every frame, every fitting, every system. He had named it Napoleon Solo, after a character from a television show he liked, which is either the most endearing detail in the history of ocean sailing or a warning sign about his decision-making, depending entirely on your perspective. He had just finished a solo transatlantic race. He had not won, but he had finished, and now he was sailing home, alone, in the dark, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, on a boat he had built himself and named after a fictional spy. He was probably thinking about home, about dry land, about the specific joy of sleeping in a bed that does not move. At approximately 11 p.m. on February 5, 1982, something hit Napoleon Solo. Hard. What hit it has never been definitively confirmed. Most likely a whale, possibly submerged debris. Whatever it was, it punched a hole in the hull large enough to sink the boat in approximately 15 minutes. Callahan had 15 minutes. Not to save Napoleon Solo. The boat was already gone. 15 minutes to save himself, and everything he would need to survive in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for an amount of time he could not yet imagine and would not have believed if someone had told him. 76 days. He was about to spend 76 days alone on a 5.5-foot inflatable raft in the middle of an ocean that had just eaten his boat and was very much still hungry. The question is not whether Stephen Callahan survived. You already know he survived. The question is what kind of mind survives 76 days in the Atlantic, on a raft the size of a dining table, with nothing but what it can think of, and whether that kind of mind is something you are born with or something you build. Welcome to Untold Archive, the channel that finds the stories of warriors, survivors, and underdogs who faced impossible situations and extracts every lesson they left behind. Today, Stephen Callahan, the sailor who watched his hand-built boat sink in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and then survived alone on a life raft for 76 days, using nothing but the contents of an emergency kit, an engineering mind, and a refusal so complete and so stubborn that the Atlantic Ocean eventually ran out of ideas. Let's go. Here's a condensed 1,000-word version covering parts 1-5, with a subscribe call to action at the end. Number 1. The man who built his own boat. To understand Stephen Callahan's survival, you first need to understand who he was before the ocean tried to kill him. This was not a man who stumbled into the Atlantic unprepared. Callahan was a naval architect, a boat designer, someone who understood the physics and engineering of vessels at a level most sailors never approach. Not from textbooks, but from the deep knowledge that comes from building something with your own hands and understanding every way it can fail. He had been sailing since he was a teenager. By his late 20s, he had designed and built Napoleon Solo himself, because building it meant understanding it completely. Not just how it worked, but how it could break, and how to fix it when it did. He had entered the Mini Transat, a solo transatlantic race not to win, but to see what he and Napoleon Solo were made of. They finished. Now he was sailing home across the Atlantic, thinking about the race, about what he'd learned. Number 2, 15 minutes. Callahan had approximately 15 minutes between the impact and the moment Napoleon Solo became the ocean's problem instead of his. The impact happened at night. He was below deck. The sound was a full structural impact, like the boat had been hit by a truck. Water came in fast, serious, final. He did not panic, he acted. He activated his emergency beacon, grabbed his emergency kit, and inflated his life raft, a 5.5-foot inflatable called Rubber Ducky. He tied the raft to Napoleon Solo. Then he did something that defines who he was. He went back in. Not because he panicked, because he was thinking. Inside the flooding boat was his emergency bag, sleeping bag, food, navigation charts, spear gun. Things he would need. He dove back into a sinking boat in the dark in the middle of the Atlantic to get what he needed, because he understood that 15 minutes was enough time to make a decision that would matter for the next 76 days. Number 3. The inventory. Here is what Callahan had: 3 pounds of food, 8 pints of water, flares, a solar still, fishing line, a spear gun, navigation charts, a knife, and a few small tools. That was everything standing between him and dying in the Atlantic. Most people would ration carefully, fish when possible, signal for rescue, and hope. That's the survival instinct enduring. Callahan did not endure. He engineered. From day one, he began a systematic assessment of every piece of equipment, not just for its intended purpose, but for every possible alternative use. The solar still was essential but insufficient, so he modified it, improving its efficiency beyond what the manufacturer intended. It was built to keep someone alive for days. Callahan needed it for however long it took. Number 4. The midpoint beat. Day 13, the raft developed a slow leak, more dangerous than a catastrophic failure because it demanded sustained attention every single day. Callahan patched it. Day 23, it got worse. He patched it again. Day 43, it was leaking badly enough that he had to pump it manually multiple times a day for the remaining 33 days. That means for the final third of his 76 days, Callahan was actively, repeatedly preventing his only shelter from deflating beneath him, while fishing, managing water, navigating, and dealing with sharks circling constantly. Callahan never described this as the moment he almost gave up. He described it as a problem he solved every day. The raft was leaking, not sinking, and leaking with an engineer on board requires a pump, not a rescue. He had a pump. He used it every day. Number 5. 76 days. Week 1. Full engineer mode, building systems and routines. Week 2. The solar still broke. Without it, he'd be dead within 48 hours. He fixed it. It broke again. He fixed it again. This pattern repeated across all 76 days, not as crisis, but as a job. Week 4. His body was changing, losing muscle, developing saltwater sores. He documented everything: physical condition, mental state, equipment status, position estimates. The log became his most important tool, not for physical survival, but because it kept his engineering mind functioning. Week 8. He'd lost a third of his body weight, his vision was affected, and he was still pumping, fishing, logging, fixing, refusing to stop. Subscribe to Untold Archive. Every Tuesday and Friday, we find the people who went into the dark and came out with something the rest of us need to hear. Because somewhere in history, someone already survived what you're going through. Untold Archive, stories, history buried, people who refuse to break.